We might know you so well, Bobby, that we'll call you Bobster, but we'll call you Bobby for now. Thanks for being here.
Always among friends. Great to be talking to you guys.
All right. Well, Bobby, let's talk crime. We've heard a lot about how President Trump is planning to send the National Guard into Chicago, Baltimore, etc., as in hellhole. But what's going on in blue states like Maine, where you're from? I mean, is help there needed as well? Good morning to you.
Good morning to all of you. I personally think it is. And to be honest, we're in a position right now where governors can take a lesson, I think, from Donald Trump. What has he done? Using Title 10, he has made D.C. safer. And frankly, every single governor has the right under Title 32 to mobilize the National Guard in support of law enforcement. And I spent years working behind the scenes with the National Guard. Bottom line is they are well positioned to stabilize things. In Maine, we don't have as high a crime rate in terms of the riot type activity, but we have a very high undisclosed crime rate. I mean, people underreport dramatically in this state, and we have a rising, really overwhelming tide of drug trafficking in this state. We have 4 or 5 of the major drug trafficking groups are here. We've had, I hate to say it, but I repeat the issue a lot, but we have extraordinary numbers of drug overdoses, between fatal and non-fatal, 10,000 overdoses last year in the state of Maine, just intolerably high. So it's, there's an epidemic, and I think you all alluded to it before. There's an epidemic of underreported crime, but if you ask the average Mainer on any given day in Bangor or in Portland or South Portland or Lewiston, if there's a crime issue, there's a major crime issue.
So if and when elected, how would you propose working with the federal government, with federal agencies, to deal with, let's say, the drug trafficking? You mentioned that you've got several major drug trafficking cartels that are operating there in Maine. How do you propose working with the federal authorities to try to get that problem under control?
So let me give you 2 answers to that, Terrence, because the real question that you've just asked is how do you turn it around and work with the federal government? And the answer is you have to get high intensity drug trafficking designations for all 16 counties in this state. You've got to bring the resources in here from Justice and from ONDCP. And then, all of that is to get law enforcement back in a position of some authority. They've really undermined. The Democrats have dramatically undermined the authority of law enforcement. I could give you 20 or 30 different regulations they're under that prevents them from actually doing their job. And then you need to upfund them, improve recruiting and retention. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're rebuilding trust inside the state and using the federal government's resources as they offer them to be able to create joint interagency task forces that have the power to turn the volume down on crime. Having said all of that, one of the other things we've got to do is understand that people, in the end, crime breaking or crime getting after drug traffickers only really works if people trust the law enforcement community and trust that they have their backs. And I personally have had great experiences with the law enforcement community. I think most Mainers have. But you have to rebuild the lost trust here in the state. Because people are fearful and they're fearful of reporting. I mean, we have 300 of these Chinese drug trafficking houses here. We have Dominican drug traffickers, the Trinitarios all over the state. Just last week, we had 2 or 3 shootouts and taking down stash houses. We have car chases that involve shootouts in cities and towns around the state like Rumford, which are not known to be big. They really are not publicly understood to be big hubs for drug trafficking, and yet they are. So one of the things you've got to do is you've got to get the connectivity back between the state and, in this case, the Trump administration, the federal government, so that we can get that support. The other is you have to build public trust. And that is a very difficult thing to do in a state where we have, it's a national problem, but it's also a state problem, particularly in rural states. We have 60% of the violent crime goes unreported, 70% of property crime goes unreported. And in our state, we have a particularly difficult time with kids and children, crimes against children. We had, as the foster care system showed a 15% decline in a recent study in crimes against children, Maine showed a 40% increase in crimes against children. So we have a lot of unreported crime, and you have to re-empower people to take it to law enforcement, and then re-empower law enforcement to address it.
You bring up this trust in law enforcement. I think that's why we've seen in so many of these cities, in Los Angeles in particular, Chicago, these lawmakers pushing back because there simply isn't that trust. You had mentioned this, but how do you rebuild it when you have to also address the immediate crime situation?
And it's a good question, and I want to be clear about it. The trust in law enforcement in Maine is high, but the overall reach of law enforcement, their ability to get to a scene in northern Maine is very, very difficult. I mean, it can take an hour. It could take 2 hours to get to a place because they've dramatically cut the reach, the access that people have. And we've got a lot of problems up here, but one of them is that people didn't and don't trust the political leadership in the state. Our capital is Augusta, and the governor and the Democrat legislature have betrayed their trust on everything from taxes to drug trafficking. And so they don't trust their political leadership. On the law enforcement side, they obviously do trust their law enforcement presence, but the problem is you have to get them there. And we've not had an increase in the patrols for the northern part of the state for our state police since 1977. They are undermanned. Portland, one of our major cities, really the largest city in Maine, Portland, which sucks down again about 60 or 70 or 80% of some of the main program money that the state generates. That city right now is 30 to 50 officers undermanned.
Wow. Bobby Charles, making such headway out there in Maine as you run for governor. We appreciate you as always. Thanks for being here.
Thank you all so much.
Brother.